I used to be a person who lived by the rules. Rules were safe, you know? They were the guardrails, keeping your life from flying off a cliff. After my last relationship went up in flames and took my job and self-respect with it, I decided to rebuild my life on a foundation of solid, unbreakable rules. I thought they'd protect me, give me the fresh start I was so desperate for. It's almost funny now, thinking back on how naive I was, how I really believed I could map out my own life and keep the chaos out with just a few little sentences. But I've learned that life has a funny way of taking your carefully written rule book, lighting it on fire, and using the ashes to build something you never could have seen coming. Something terrifying and intoxicating and totally life-changing. And it all started with one broken rule, one night, and one man I was never, ever supposed to see again. I had 3 rules for my new life. Rule 1, no more disastrous one-night stands. The emotional hangover was never worth it. Rule 2, absolutely nail this new job. This was my big break, my chance to finally prove myself at a top-tier firm. And Rule 3, no workplace drama, period. My head, my heart, and my career just couldn't take it. I was repeating them to myself like a prayer as the elevator doors slid open. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my blazer, and walked toward the corner office. The gleaming nameplate on the door read Damian Blackwood, CEO. He was standing with his back to me, looking out over the city. When he turned around, my prayer died in my throat. It was him, the man from the bar, the man from my bed. His eyes, those same piercing gray eyes that had seen every inch of me just 48 hours ago, widened for a split second. And then, slam, a mask of cold, hard professionalism. My heart didn't just drop, it plummeted. So much for the rules. Even just standing there, frozen in his doorway, the flashback hits me like a ton of bricks. 2 nights ago feels like another lifetime. I was at a friend's bachelorette party, squeezed into a dress I couldn't afford, and surrounded by women celebrating a future I didn't believe in anymore. My own engagement had ended 6 months earlier in a spectacular train wreck of lies that left me single, jobless, and crashing at my sister's tiny apartment. I was drowning in bitterness. So I slipped away from the party and found a quiet, dimly lit whiskey bar in the hotel. That's where I saw him. He was alone at the bar, nursing a glass of amber liquid. And he wasn't just handsome, he was compelling. Dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than my car, he had this aura of quiet power. Our eyes met, and this jolt, sharp and electric, shot right through me. It was a dangerous feeling, like a spark of life in the dead landscape my heart had become. I told myself to look away. This was the kind of man who broke hearts for sport. But then he was walking toward me. "Hiding from the chaos?" he'd asked, his voice a low baritone that vibrated right through me. "Something like that," I said, surprised by my own nerve. "Celebrating the end of a friend's freedom." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Or the beginning of a different kind. The conversation just flowed. We talked for hours, but not about anything that really mattered. No jobs, no pasts, no names. It was an unspoken deal. We were just 2 anonymous people connecting in the dark. His wit was as sharp as his suit, and for the first time in months, I felt alive. When he leaned in and murmured, "I don't want this night to end," I didn't even hesitate. Breaking rule number 1 felt less like a mistake and more like a necessity, like finally taking a breath after being held underwater. His hotel room was a penthouse suite with a view that could steal your breath, but I barely saw it. All I could focus on was him. The night was a blur of intense, desperate passion, completely disconnected from reality. I woke up just as the sun was starting to paint the sky and slipped out of bed while he was still asleep. The rules came rushing back. This was a mistake. A glorious, unforgettable mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. I couldn't face the morning after awkwardness, the part where we'd exchange real names and chain this fantasy to the real world. So I ran. I left without a word. The scent of his cologne on my skin, the only proof he wasn't a dream. A clean break. I'd never see him again. And now, here he is, Damian Blackwood, my new boss. The shock is a physical roar in my ears, drowning everything else.
His face is a blank canvas, but I can see the storm in his gray eyes. He knows, and for one terrifying second, I see the man from the bar, the predator, the charmer. Then he's gone, replaced by the cool, assessing gaze of a CEO. "Ms. Vance," he says, and his voice is completely different. The same deep timbre, but now it's laced with steel. Hearing my name from his lips feels like an accusation. "Welcome to Sterling Thorne. Please come in. Close the door." My legs move on their own. I step into the massive office and click the door shut behind me. The sound echoes like a gunshot, sealing my fate. My carefully planned new life just became a minefield. He doesn't say a word about the other night. He just gestures to the chair opposite his desk, and I sink into it. He launches into a monologue about my role, about expectations, about the key accounts I'll be handling. His voice is a steady, professional drone, but I can't focus. All I can think about is his hand gripping a pen, the same hand that had traced patterns on my skin. I can feel his eyes on me, analytical and cold, and it's 1,000 times more unnerving than his passionate gaze had been. It feels like he's dissecting me, peeling back my professional mask layer by layer, knowing exactly what's underneath. This isn't the man I had a one-night stand with. This is a stranger, a powerful, intimidating stranger who holds my entire future in his hands. At the end of the day, I practically sprint from the building, gasping for air. My mind is a chaotic mess of panic and humiliation. I should quit, just walk away right now before this gets any more complicated. But I can't. I fought so hard for this job. It's my only chance to get my life back. So I make a new rule, the only one that matters now. Rule 4. Pretend that night never happened. He is just Damian Blackwood, my boss. I am just Amelia Vance, his employee. I will be so professional, so unremarkable, that he'll have no choice but to forget. I will survive this. I have to.
That first week was psychological torture, pure and simple. My plan to be unremarkable failed spectacularly because he just wouldn't let it happen. Damien, or Mr. Blackwood as I religiously called him, became my shadow. He didn't just micromanage, he dissected my every move. He'd call me into his office for status updates that somehow stretched for hours. We were supposed to be discussing projections, but his questions always veered personal. "What drives you, Miss Vance? What are you passionate about?" Each question felt like a test, a persistent attempt to find the woman from the bar. He never did. I buried her too deep. His critiques of my work were relentless. He challenged every idea, forcing me to defend every single strategy. At first, I was sure he was trying to make me quit. But then, after a brutal 3-hour presentation where he tore my proposal to shreds, he leaned back and said, "Good start. I knew you had it in you." It wasn't a compliment. It was a confirmation. He wasn't trying to break me. He was pushing me. And the worst part? It was working. My work was becoming sharper and more innovative than ever before. Then the gifts started. It began with a floral arrangement that looked like it belonged at a royal wedding, so enormous the delivery guy could barely get it through the door. The card read, "For landing the Harrison account. The best deserve the best. D." That single initial was a deliberate intimacy that made my skin crawl. The office whispers followed me everywhere. A week later, a bonus showed up in my paycheck that was more than 3 months' rent. The memo called it a performance incentive. I knew it was a golden handcuff, a way to bind me to him. Rejecting it was impossible, but accepting it felt like surrender. In a desperate bid for normalcy, I started having lunch with a colleague from finance, Liam. He was funny, charming, and refreshingly normal. When he asked me to get coffee after work one Friday, I said yes immediately. It was just coffee, harmless, friendly, non-CEO-related coffee. But nothing was ever harmless. Damien saw us laughing by the elevators. I didn't even have to look at him to feel the temperature in the hallway drop 10 degrees. He went still, watchful, a predator spotting a rival. 10 minutes later, an email hit my inbox. Subject, urgent,
Project Titan Strategy Session, mandatory, 6 p.m. Friday. I just stared at the screen, a cold dread forming in my stomach. This was no coincidence. He was deliberately cutting me off. His possessiveness wasn't even subtle anymore. I had to cancel on Liam, stammering some pathetic excuse. The strategy session was just us in the huge, empty boardroom. The project was real, but the urgency wasn't. Finally, he stopped pacing and turned to me. "He's not right for you," he said, his voice quiet but intense. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Blackwood." "Liam," he clarified. "He's simple. You'd be bored in a week." "My personal life isn't up for discussion," I said, standing up. "If we're done, I have to go." He moved faster than I expected, blocking my path. He was so close I could smell that same cologne from my memories. "Why did you run that morning, Amelia?" he asked, his voice dropping to that intimate tone from the bar. Using my first name felt like he was branding me. "It was a mistake," I whispered, my back pressed against the cold wall. "No," he said, placing a hand on the wall next to my head, caging me. "Us meeting here, in this office, that's a complication. But that night, that was not a mistake. Not for me." The air was so thick with tension I could barely breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen. And under the fear, there was a treacherous flicker of heat. The phone on the table rang, shattering the moment. He cursed under his breath and stepped back. I didn't wait. I fled, my heels clicking frantically as I ran from him and from myself. The next month, he announced we had to fly to Chicago for a client pitch. Just the two of us. 3 days of forced proximity. My worst nightmare. It got worse at the hotel. "There's been a mix-up with the reservation," the clerk said, looking flustered. "We only have one booking. The only thing available is the presidential suite." I looked at Damien, expecting him to argue, but he just nodded. "That will be fine." Of course it would. I knew with sickening certainty there was no mix-up. He arranged this. The suite was a gilded cage. 2 separate bedrooms, thankfully, but a large shared living room connecting them. That night at dinner, he was brilliant, charming the clients completely. But later, one of them, Marcus, had too much wine and got a little too close, his hand lingering on my arm. Before I could even think of what to say, Damien was there. He simply placed a hand on the small of my back, a gesture that was both proprietary and protective. "Marcus," he said, his voice light, "I need to steal Amelia back. We have to prep for the morning." He steered me away, the message clear to everyone. She's mine. Back in the suite, the silence was deafening. "Thank you," I said stiffly, heading for my room. "I don't want you to thank me," he said, stopping me. "I want you to be honest. Are you really this unaffected by me?" My composure finally started to crack. "Unaffected? My life has been chaos since I walked into your office. You scrutinize my every move, you sabotage any attempt I have at a normal life, you manipulate situations to force me near you. This isn't professional, it's obsession," he finished for me, stepping closer. "Is that what you think this is?" "I don't know what it is," I cried out, "but it's not normal." "Nothing about this is normal, Amelia," he said, his voice raw. "From the moment I saw you in that bar, I felt a connection. Finding you in my office felt like fate. I'm not going to apologize for fighting for something I know is real." "This isn't fighting, it's controlling," I shot back. "You have all the power here, Damien. I need this job. What am I supposed to do?" He looked at me, and for a second I saw something like regret. "I would never use your job against you." "You already are," I said, tears of frustration finally welling up. "Every late-night meeting, every bonus, this hotel suite, it's all a power play, and I can't win." I finally escaped to my room and locked the door, leaning against it, trembling. He thought this was romantic, some grand gesture of fate. But from where I was standing, it just felt like the walls were closing in.
The crisis hit on a rainy Tuesday with a single, terrifying headline. Sterling Thorne suffers massive data breach. Flagship campaign for Petrocorp leaked to rival. Petrocorp was my account, my campaign, the one Damien and I had bled over for the last month. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. This was a company-killing disaster. The office descended into chaos. Whispers turned to accusations. Since the leak seemed to be tied to my project drive, all eyes were on me. I could feel their suspicion, the sideways glances. My career was over. I was just waiting for the summons from HR. Instead, Damien's assistant appeared, her face pale. "He wants to see you, now." I walked to his office on legs made of glass. This was it. I braced myself for the end. He was standing by the window, just like my first day, but this time his whole body was rigid with tension. He turned to me, his face grim. "They're calling for your head," he said flatly. "The board thinks you're either incompetent or you were bought. They want you gone by noon." I flinched. I opened my mouth, but what could I say? Then he did something I never expected. He picked up his phone and put it on speaker. The furious voice of the chairman of the board filled the room, demanding my immediate termination. I listened, mortified, as he listed all my supposed failures. When he finally finished, there was a heavy silence. "No," Damien said simply. "What do you mean, no?" the chairman sputtered. "I am not firing Miss Vance," Damien said, his voice dangerously calm. "The leak didn't come from her. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a company to save." He ended the call, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. He had just put his entire career on the line. For me. He looked at me, his eyes blazing. "I trust you, Amelia," he said, and in those 3 words, everything shifted. "We're gonna fix this. Together." For the next 72 hours, the world outside his office disappeared. We worked side by side, fueled by caffeine and pure adrenaline. The power imbalance, the boss-employee act, it all melted away. We were just 2 partners in a foxhole. We argued, we brainstormed, we pushed each other past exhaustion. I saw a new side of him, not the cold boss or the passionate stranger, but a brilliant leader who was vulnerable under the weight of it all. And he saw me not as an employee or an obsession, but as an equal. We found it. The breach wasn't a hack, it was a mole, a junior analyst deep in debt who sold the data. As we printed the final piece of evidence, around 4 a.m., the exhaustion hit us both at once. We were standing in the middle of his office, surrounded by the debris of our work. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a quiet, raw intimacy. He looked at me, his armor completely gone. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For what?" I whispered. "You saved my job." "For how I've handled this. Us," he clarified. "I know I've been intense, controlling." He ran a hand through his hair. "The truth is, that night we met was the first time in years I felt anything real. Then you were gone. When you walked into this office, I panicked. I felt like I had been given a second chance, and I was terrified of losing you again." He took a hesitant step closer. "My obsession, it was just a clumsy, desperate way of trying to show you how much you mean to me. I knew the power dynamic was wrong. I knew it was suffocating you, but I didn't know how to stop. Until now." He stood right in front of me, his expression open and earnest. "I love you, Amelia, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove it. I'll resign. I'll take that transfer to the London office. I will give up my power over you, gladly, if it means I can have a real chance to be with you." He had laid it all at my feet, his power, his position, his heart. He'd given the control back to me. And in that moment, I surrendered too. The fear I'd been carrying for months finally dissolved. His obsession wasn't just about possession, it was a deeply flawed declaration of love. "You don't have to resign," I said, my own voice trembling. "But taking that London job might be a good idea." A slow smile spread on his tired face. I reached up and touched his cheek. "I was terrified of you," I admitted, "but I think I was more terrified of how I felt about you." He closed the small space between us and kissed me. It wasn't like the desperate kiss from the bar, or the kiss of a boss claiming an employee. It was a kiss between equals, a kiss of promise, of relief, of a new beginning. He kept his word. The next week, a company-wide memo announced that Damien Blackwood was being promoted to head the European expansion from the London office effective immediately. In the same memo, a second announcement was made. The new director of North American marketing was me. My life didn't have rules anymore. It had choices, challenges, and it had love. A love that was messy, difficult, and at times terrifying, but it was real. 6 months later, I'm leading a presentation to our biggest new client, feeling a confidence I never knew I had. My phone buzzes, a text from him. Counting down the hours until I see that smile in person. D. He's flying in for the weekend. We're making it work, building something new on a foundation of trust. I once thought 3 little rules would save me. Turns out, I only needed 1. Sometimes the greatest risks lead to the most breathtaking rewards. He wasn't my boss anymore, and his obsession had finally become a love I could trust. And our story, it was really just getting started. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more romance stories just like this one. What did you think of Damien's actions? Were they unforgivable or a grand romantic gesture? Let us know in the comments below.